This is Ann Fredrickson from Pro Seniors and the Ohio Senior Medicare Patrol Project, along with my special guest, once again, Holly Henderson, local dementia specialist, welcoming you to another edition of Medicare Moment. I am really thrilled to bring Holly back with me on our show today. Holly was my guest in November, and as I mentioned, Holly is a local dementia specialist. And the last interview, we discussed with Holly all about Alzheimer's disease and dementia care and providing the best quality of care and services to seniors living with these diseases. And I learned from Holly following our last interview that there is a technique that she and other dementia specialists are using that benefits people living with dementia. And as before the interview, I've even learned more that I'm so excited that we'll be able to share with our listeners today. And by the way, Holly is an approved instructor for the National Council of Certified Dementia Practitioners. She also holds many other prestigious credentials in dementia care. Welcome, Holly.
Good. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.
We're so happy to have you. I'm really excited about this show today. So, Holly, in case some of our listeners didn't have the opportunity to hear our last show together, let's bring them up to speed with the definition of Alzheimer's and dementia and explain these diseases.
Okay, I'm happy to. This is the most common question that I'm asked on a regular basis, and the easiest correlation that I can make for people is that dementia is a broad umbrella term, and underneath that umbrella, there's several related types of dementias. Alzheimer's disease is one of those types.
Okay.
So there's well over 100, but what we hear the most commonly referred to is Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
You even hear dementia and Alzheimer's used interchangeably. So for me, I always like to say Alzheimer's disease and related dementias because they're all under that broad umbrella.
So that's the better way of really coining that, is that you say related dementias. Then.
Yes, because they are all symptomatic under that umbrella and related. Even though statistically Alzheimer's has a higher percentage of diagnoses, they are under that same umbrella.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for bringing us up to speed there. We know, since you shared with me in the last interview, that it's important to understand the disease in order to really know how to care for people living with this type of disease, dementia. So one of the techniques that I was so excited to share with our listeners today is that you have worked with people and developed is the use of drum circles. And explain what you mean by drum circles, and even that exciting and interesting background about Native Americans and everything, because I just love hearing about it, Holly.
Okay. So in my work, I live in the world of nonverbal communication, because what we do know is that one of the first functional abilities that is delayed, slowed, or even lost is the use of language, the use of speech. And in the early stages, that might present as, someone is searching for their words and confusion.
Okay.
And then that might also be that they can't find the word, or they'll say, the thing, that thing that goes there. Or they might perseverate or start to repeat the same sounds of a word. And then their sentences, if they can make them, are disorganized. And then eventually, through the later stages, you may see it's not uncommon to have around 5 to 7 words that it's their go-to words. Okay. So one of the first things in my coaching that I always tell people is you cannot rely on language only as their only way of communication. Okay. So I love and I have a passion for what falls under nonverbal communication. So in my coaching, we do a lot of in terms of your gestures and your prompts, your facial expressions. And I started to really look at how can we communicate through non-word modalities. And music, obviously, is one. And more specifically, I ran across a protocol using drums as a tool of expression and communication. And I fell in love with it. And I really took that protocol and adapted it for people living with dementia. And I have found such great outcomes and such great benefits that I started to really not only see that it benefited daily doing drum circles, but I saw that it started to have great benefits for the staff and people caring for those living with dementia as well.
The staff?
Yes,
Holly?
absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible.
So this protocol is known as Health Rhythms Group Empowerment Drumming. And I was privileged enough, being from the Cincinnati area, to have great resources here in our Cincinnati Music and Wellness Coalition. And I attended a training by Arlene De Silva, and she is the CEO and founder of the Music and Wellness Coalition. And this training is meant to be group empowerment, using the drums as a means of expression and communication. And it fell very much in alignment with my work for those living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And I really valued the research behind it, the evidence-based outcomes, and the wellness benefits. So the observations that I was having was absolutely backed up by the evidence and the research by the founder, who's Dr. Barry Bittman, who is a neurologist, author, researcher, and has conducted extensive research on the benefits. So I found that what I suspected was not only true, but it was backed up in their research, which was fascinating.
That is fascinating. That's incredible. We're talking today with Holly Henderson, and Holly is a dementia specialist. And Holly, tell us a little bit more about why these drum circles are so beneficial for people living with dementia. What exactly happens in the brain? What happens in their behavior? Just share with our listeners a little bit about that.
Great. So when I do a drum circle for those living with dementia, I get so excited because it's not only limited to people in early stage, middle stage, or late stage. It works for all stages.
Okay.
And the reason that it works for all stages is that what we do know, rhythm and the ability to respond musically, maintains in the brain through all stages of disease. So we know that because where we store the ability to access rhythm and music is it's a different place in the brain than where we store language. Okay. So even I've worked with people that could not make a sentence, but they could drum "You Are My Sunshine" for the whole duration of the song on a drum.
Oh, that just gives me chills just thinking about that. That's amazing. Huh?
To experience it is something that will give you chills. We have had tearful moments where people who were not, to give a tool where they were not able to communicate and now they can, is really incredible.
Unbelievable.
But that's why it works. It works for all stages. It's failure free. And by that, I mean, you cannot do it wrong. Like if you sit down to play the trumpet, there's a way you could fail at the trumpet, right?
That's right.
But if you put a very simple percussion drum, everybody can tap their fingers. Yeah. If you can tap your fingers, you can play a drum.
You have success.
Absolutely.
That's unbelievable.
So my favorite type of engagement is failure free, and this protocol is written in that way. And so for me, it's a success and a win-win, and that is for all stages of dementia.
That's incredible. There's so much. It gives me hope, because it's such a debilitating disease that listening to you talk just gets me excited too. About some opportunities. It really does. You mentioned that the rhythm stays in the brain through all stages, which is really interesting to me. How's that been determined? And you did say there's been. I was going to ask you about studies, but how have they dissected the brain and been able, after people have passed away, have they been able to search inside and determine that there were parts that were still active and everything? And
this is a great question, and one of the greatest things that I've ever Googled is you can actually look at MRI scans of the brain where people have been involved in music simultaneously while getting their scan. And you're able to see the areas of the brain that actually light up in an MRI scan. And we can see that music actually lights up all centers of the brain. Whereas relaxing, reading a magazine, or even just talking will have very less activity on that MRI.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Wow.
If you actually just did a search online for just generic scans, MRIs of people while they're listening to music, it's amazing.
It sure is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't know everything about the brain, but we know these critical findings, and we use them in how we do failure-free programs. So for me, I see it in a circle and in my engagement, but then to see those, scans is fascinating to put it alongside it.
Oh, it sure is. It's so exciting to me to hear all this. I know that you use drum circles in a variety of settings. Talk about the different settings that you use in different areas, different parts, facilities, and different things. Describe some of those, Holly.
So, of course, my favorite one is actually conducting a drum circle in a memory care, which these are people who have exceeded the ability to live at home, and they have gone into a community-style living. It's usually secured, and they have, an apartment or some type of living arrangement. And I love to see the caregivers say, they're not going to be able to participate because they can't. And then here I come with my drums, and I show that caregiver that if we set them up properly, they can. And so you bring a yes where there used to be a no. And I love that. So that's my favorite. I have also done this protocol as a strategy for stress reduction for caregivers, those people who are still in home, maybe doing, that 24-hour shift, piecemealing that out with their families, and they are stressed. And I have offered it as a support group event where you could, come for the evening and meet other people in the same boat, in the same story a little bit. And I talk about the benefits and the exact wellness benefits of this circle. And in that circle, I am able to use a little more language, a little more instruction, and the protocol is more comprehensive, that these folks are not living with impairment themselves, but my main goal is for them to experience those health benefits and those stress reduction benefits.
And I think this is so great, Holly, because oftentimes the support groups, there's not enough there to get people there, to be honest with you, because I've been a caregiver, and you have to have some kind of an outcome. If you're going to go and spend your time, and as valuable as time is today, and if you're a working caregiver and you also are taking care of a loved one, you need something that you can get from it more than just people sharing their feelings and how things are going. I know that from my own experience.
I agree. And I always say, with a little bit of humor, I say, take an evening, and we're not going to cry in our Kleenexes, but we're going to reduce our stress. And that's wonderful. That type of support group, there is nothing better for them.
Oh, absolutely. I so agree. I can just feel myself even thinking through all that I've been through, and it would have been so helpful for me as well. And I know, just to let people know that even there are benefits to listening to music on an iPod, or creating music, and talk about that a little bit too, Holly.
Sure. And this is not to discredit any of those efforts, because they are wonderful.
Yes.
If you get a personalized playlist on an iPod and put it in terms of headphones for delivery, that is great. But what that is passive engagement, which means you are listening to music and you're receiving it. It's one way. It's transactional in a way. The difference with a Health Rhythms drumming circle is that it is active engagement. It means you're not just it's not just a transaction that's happening to you.
Right.
You're making the music.
Okay.
So it's recreational music making that you receive so much more benefit from, not only because of the physical motion, but because it is an active level of engagement, not just passive.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. Again, I think it's something that people like to be doers. Again, we're talking with Holly Henderson, and Holly is a dementia specialist, and I know we're getting somewhat close to time, and I could talk to Holly for days. But talk a little bit about, let's talk about other populations, just real quickly, that and you've mentioned this even before we got started today, that they've seen these drumming circles, these health rhythms actually benefit other populations as well. Just share that with our listeners.
Oh my gosh, the protocol is serving so many different areas that it's exciting. I have a great friend of mine, Jaylyn Simmons, who was trained at the same time as I was. She does it with adolescent, troubled youth. And her goal is to try and reduce stress and start the path of re-engaging that person in the school system. But these are young people who need, again, a tool of communication, and she uses the drum. And I think that is so admirable. Yeah, so she takes the protocol and modifies it for her population. Alcohol and treatment centers, behavioral health, special needs populations. Aging is a big one, and obviously that's where I specialize in. If you were to look at the research, even some studies have been done with first-year nursing students. High stress.
Yes.
Test groups. That's a stressful year.
Absolutely.
And so drum circles, health rhythms was brought in to see if we could reduce that stress in that population. And it's effective and evidence-based in all these arenas. And it is exciting.
Yeah, it's so exciting. When I listen to Holly, I could listen to her all day. But I want you to say, because we are about out of time.
I know.
If there's, I'll have to have Holly again sometime because there's just so much here. She's just so valuable to me and to our listeners, I think. Is there anything else that you want to add before we have to sign up about drumming and how that people can find out more about this and where can they contact you and all that?
Yes. So I would be remiss in my working career if I didn't acknowledge Arlene Da Silva and the Music and Wellness Coalition that is now global, but started here in Cincinnati. And if you would like to read more of the research, if you're interested in becoming a certified health rhythms facilitator, you can always look at the website to see when the next training will be happening. Okay. And that website is musicandwellness.net. So it's www.musicandwellness.net. And all of Barry Bittman's research is linked there, as well as the Yamaha Music and Wellness Institute, REMO. All of those great resources are listed there. And I have been so blessed there was a time I was sharing that she would let me borrow her drums. This has been such a journey. And for me to be able to now be someone who recommends drums as a beginning supply, a beginning inventory is so fun for me. But the other thing I just want to leave as a final thought is, although dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and other related dementias is a devastating diagnosis, the conversation is not over. There are lots of vibrant, valuable ways that you can have positive experiences, and the Health Rhythms Drumming Circle is one of them. But I love that the message here is hope, and there is still positivity that can happen.
That's great. Well, and especially working with somebody like you, Holly, because you have such a great positive attitude that I think that'll help a number of people be engaged and hope for their future. So I really want to thank Holly. Our special guest today has been Holly Henderson, dementia specialist. Thank you so much, Holly, for coming in again today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. It's exciting to hear about these health rhythms, drumming circles, and I'm so encouraged after hearing you speak today that this new modality truly does benefit the care of older people afflicted by Alzheimer's and other dementia. If only now we could get more memory care facilities to adapt the technique to benefit many, many more people. That's my parting thoughts. This is Ann Fredrickson from Pro Seniors and the Ohio SMP Project, inviting you to tune into the next edition of Medicare Moment right here on WMKV 89.3 FM, WLHS 89.9 FM, and now available as a podcast on WMKVFM.org. Medicare Moment is sponsored by the Medicare Plan Store.